You are listening to Awake in Relationship, a podcast about intimacy, community, and culture in a time of great change, with Silas Rose.
Greetings, friends. My name is Silas Rose, and you are tuned into Awake in Relationship. Between Donald Trump and a global pandemic, there seems to be very little bandwidth left for other existential problems like the climate crisis. In this regard, our society is very much like a deer caught in the headlights. Who doesn't struggle with a sense of overwhelm or even dread about the future? In this episode, I speak with Trina Woods, a registered clinical social worker and facilitator of the Work That Reconnects, about melting the frozen place of fear and despair and moving towards action in response to the many challenges we all face in this time of great change. We also talk about anger and grief as important touchstones for reconnecting to the greater web of life. If you're interested in Joanna Macy's work, systems theory, or in deep ecology, I think you're going to enjoy this episode. So please stay tuned. Trina, welcome to Awake in Relationship. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Silas. Thank you so much for having me.
So we're kind of deep into a second wave here in British Columbia. They've just announced new restrictions. Mm-hmm. And, it's a really stressful time for a lot of people. Is there a place in the couch and that you like to visit in such times?
Yes, there's many beautiful places in the Cowichan Valley. One of my favorites is the Glenora Head Trail, which is the start of a trail. It's a portion of the trailhead of the Glenora Footpath as well as the Trans-Canada Trail. And it runs along the Cowichan River for miles and miles in both directions, and forested paths. And right now, hopefully I'll make it out there today because it's a beautiful day and the salmon are running. So
magical.
Yeah, it's very magical.
So, that's kind of start for those that don't know about the Work That Reconnects. Let's start with a very brief description. We'll go into kind of details further in the conversation about the spiral, but what is this work?
Yeah, so the Work That Reconnects is a form of experiential group work that was created by Joanna Macy, who's a Buddhist scholar and an activist. And it was created as a means to support activists to move out of despair over what was happening and a sense of powerlessness, and to move into a sense of empowerment and to give tools and vision for continuing forward in that work of healing our planet.
And how did you first connect with Joanna Macy's work?
I came to Joanna Macy's work in the fourth year of my undergrad in social work and environmental studies. I was in a place, I had done a lot of activism through my 20s, and even at that young age, I'd already experienced a bit of burnout, just feeling a bit of hopelessness around where we were at with logging here on Vancouver Island. By the time I hit my fourth year of environmental studies, I'd been inundated with a lot of information about ecological degradation and climate change. And I couldn't really see a path forward at that point. I kind of got stuck under the dark cloud of despair. And when I came across Joanna's words in an integral systems theory course, it was a kind of balm for my soul at that point. I just heard in it what I needed to kind of bring that little bit of light in and feel a sense of, oh, I don't need hope. I don't need to know the way forward. But I do need to touch the pain, and I do need some tools. And she offered those.
Tools in a community of people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And community is such an important part. And that's why it is group work. Yeah. We definitely need each other. We do have the tools and we do have the strength, but we do need each other as well.
I've been reading The Wild Edge of Sorrow. So Francis Weller talks a lot about the importance of community to kind of process grief. He also talks about, many cultures speak of grief as a time of ashes. Mm-hmm. And, in the context of the summer we just had with the wildfires on the west coast of the continent. So we are literally living in a time of ashes. Much of the work that reconnects deals with grief, particularly eco-grief. What is that?
In the work that reconnects, we call it honoring our pain because we include not only our grief, our sadness, but also our anger, our justifiable rage for what's happening. And it's our sadness for the loss of our more than human world, our more than human self. And so that is one of the perspective shifts that the work that reconnects offers, is that our pain is not just an individual, personal pain.
And in some sense, evidence of our connection.
Exactly.
It seems that some people are more prone to feeling that deeply.
I tend to think that we are all capable of feeling sense of sadness over the losses that we are all experiencing right now. However, I think we are also very capable of suppressing and numbing out. We have a kind of a learned response of numbing out and suppressing, and it becomes habitual. And one thing that I would say is just currently with COVID, the people's capacity to do that is becoming weakened in a sense that, we can suppress and repress our pain and our grief over what is happening to our earth, as long as we have the energy to do that, because it does consume a huge amount of energy to hold those feelings at bay. And when you add stresses, such a huge stress of the pandemic onto people's lives, that becomes less and less possible for a lot of people. And a lot of people are experiencing anxiety and depression around what's happening at a new level.
So let's get into the guts of it really with the stages of the work. It's all kind of based around a spiral where we kind of move from this kind of frozen place, as you call numbing out, through the stages of the work, and eventually arriving kind of at empowerment and hopefully action.
Yeah. So the work that reconnect is a spiral because, well, one of the things is that it comes out, the work that reconnects comes out of systems theory, one of its root philosophies. And in systems, you have open and closed systems. And open systems can receive feedback and can adapt to changing situations and can continue to function and to regulate even when things are kind of difficult. And in the spiral, also, what is so useful about a spiral is that, unlike a line, a spiral is showing this movement. We keep moving. We don't just go from here to there and then we're done. We come back to these different points of the spiral. And so we start with gratitude because gratitude buoys us up. Gratitude is a revolutionary act in our industrial growth society because it is an acknowledgement that we are enough, which is counter to the message that we're receiving so often. And it really does create a sense of ground for us to stand on. And that is the experience when you share your gratitude in group, that I've experienced over and over again, is a sense of, I'm solid. I have the ground beneath my feet.
Yeah, there's a resource.
Exactly. It resources us. But it also seamlessly moves us into honoring our pain for the world. Because when we acknowledge our love for the more than human world, or for the places we loved as a child, we also simultaneously acknowledge the loss that's happening. And so when I open to loving, I have to be open to grief, to loss, and to injustice, to anger, and to fear about losing. I instantly open to that. So there's this movement into honoring our pain, and in the work that reconnects, we feel it, we honor it, we expand to be able to hold it and to sustain our gaze for what's happening, not in a way that's necessarily about catharsis. So we're not just trying to kind of get it out, and I think that's sort of maybe how some people imagine it, is like, I have to empty myself of this pain, but really we're unblocking ourselves as systems to be able to let what is be with us, so that we are not stuck in despair, and so that we do free up that energy that goes to trying to hold back those feelings. Because emotions, the word emotion comes from émouvoir, which means to move. And so emotions literally have this capacity to move us. Our anger moves us to fight for what is unjust, and our sadness moves us to open our hearts and to love. And yeah.
And then it goes to the seeing with new eyes. That's
right.
Strikes me as kind of seeing with a new worldview.
Yes, exactly. And so again, that seamless movement, because when we honor our pain and we do it together, we expand to an experience. And it really is not just theoretical, although in Seeing with New Eyes, we do draw on some theoretical elements to give us some brain food and to spark new perspectives. But it's very much experiential in the fact that we have an experience of, when I open my heart, when I feel my sadness, I recognize that I am the earth crying. I am like, or we can imagine ourselves to be like a nerve cell of the earth, a nerve ganglia of the earth, being able to feel all that is happening. And we also come to recognize that we are all feeling this. And so we see other people. And so we see with the new eyes that we are not just these individual selves. We are this larger collective experience.
When I've participated in groups, we can go to some pretty dark places. As a facilitator, how do you hold that? And what do you see as the value of going into the darkness?
So what I've experienced is that, first of all, people generally come to this work because they're looking for a container for these feelings. And they come ready, in a sense. They come willing, which makes it easier as a facilitator. But I guess for me, because of my experience in it, and it's really rooted in experience, is that I trust our capacity to be with these feelings and to, as Joanna calls it, sustain the gaze. So, and I trust that when we when we do the work and we create a container for the work. And I guess that's what I trust the structure of the work as well. So I trust the spiral to keep us moving. So we touch on the pain, we honor the pain, we fully allow ourselves to feel the pain, but we don't stay in the pain. We keep moving. And that is part of it. And as a counselor, as a therapist, that is what we do with our clients as well. We titrate, it's called. So we allow ourselves to move into those deeper, difficult feelings in a contained way. And then we move out. So we don't overwhelm or flood our systems. That's where gratitude comes in. And that's where we come back to gratitude as this ground to stand on. And that's where looking at the bigger picture and seeing with new eyes. And also, this work can be done without being, on the land or in the earth, but it's done so often and so importantly while being on the land and close to the earth, because it provides a container to hold all of that with us, and a real felt sense of ground and of the larger body.
When it comes to issues like climate change or the climate crisis, things can feel kind of hopeless. Are you hopeful?
I am hopeful in some ways. I guess what I've learned from Joanna and from this work is that I don't require hope to go forth. We live in a time of difficulty and of uncertainty and of most certainly, I say uncertainty, but I also feel a sense of the great possibility that things are going to be difficult. From that place, from that recognition, I feel it is so important to move onto the knife edge of uncertainty, which is the place where anything is possible. And I think we experience this when someone that we love is dying or when someone is giving birth. So we experience this great uncertainty of what is going to happen. And if we have someone in our lives who's very sick, they may survive or they may not. And in that place of uncertainty, we become very present and we do whatever we can to make sure that life is experienced, is honored, is healed if possible. And as with a birth, we do whatever we can to bring that life forward, even with the sense that it might not work. Like there's always this uncertainty. And so from that place, we don't need hope. We can move forward because we love and because we believe and we're committed to something. And so I personally feel a commitment, and this work has helped me to deepen in my commitment to sustaining life for future generations.
Yeah, the reason I ask that is it seems in some activist circles, hope is kind of a dirty word.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Well, yeah, because it can be about a magical kind of positivity and a denial of the difficulty, a sort of blind optimism and a failure to acknowledge people's struggle and people's pain and the great struggle to come. And so hope that ignores all of that isn't very useful hope, I think.
We're living in a time when we're all kind of in our own little silos. And it's very difficult to have conversations about our collective future, especially with the people we love or our neighbors and friends. There's no middle ground anymore. How do we have those conversations now?
I think it's a very important question. I think one of the things we can keep our mind on when we look at the polarizing perspectives and the lack of a middle ground is we can look to history, and when we have sustained economic breakdown and scarcity, there has been a tendency for that kind of a polarization to occur as people become scared and look for a reason for their fear and look for potentially a scapegoat or something to blame. To me, I come back to, first of all, the vision and commitment to something that we all want, which is to sustain life. So there is a common ground there, and a willingness to be open to diverse perspectives. And I think that's what I feel is a gift in this work, and is a way that the work is evolving as well, is that the gift in the work is that we learn to really listen. We sort of grow a fearlessness to let people share with us the truth of what they're experiencing without judgment.
Throughout this conversation, you return to a very kind of large view, and I think that's obviously inspired by Joanna's work and your own personal kind of path. The work that reconnects is really nested in this kind of vision of the great turning. What is that?
Yeah, so in the work that reconnects, we acknowledge that we live in a time where there are three stories happening simultaneously. There's business as usual, which is often called the industrial growth society or corporate global capitalism. And it is, we know what it is. And I think many of the people who will listen to this podcast have probably been working for a long time to stop or change what's been happening there. And what we're seeing now is signs that business as usual can't go on. We've reached kind of a peak prosperity there, and there is signs of crumbling and collapse of that story. And that's what brings us to the second story, which is called the Great Unraveling, a very systems theory kind of term, because systems don't just suddenly collapse and break down, they unravel slowly. And we see that socially and ecologically currently. The sort of activist movement towards bringing down business as usual, shifting things has sort of, I think, from a Work That Reconnects perspective, come to a place where we no longer really need to fight the system in that way. We perhaps, it needs us to kind of help it collapse gently, in a sense, because we are moving into a new time where something new could possibly arise if the collapse of this current industrial growth society doesn't obliterate everything in its fall. So that brings us to the Great Turning, because this third story, the Great Turning, while once perhaps was an idea that we would kind of change the system before it collapsed, it doesn't necessarily look like that anymore. It looks like it's very possible that the current system will crumble and collapse. And so sort of sustainably propping this current economy up may not be possible. And so the Great Turning it still remains a shift to a life-sustaining society, which it always was. But now, as I implied earlier, it's a vision and commitment to carry through to sustain life and diversity and what is beautiful and what is possible through this passage that we're going through, so that something new can arise and be built. And so the great turning really has become almost an internal commitment, as well as the actions that we take, and the ways that we participate. So it's what we choose, really. Which story do we choose to participate in?
I just think a mantra for me lately has been nature always wins.
Exactly. And that's so hopeful. Just to come back to hope, I mean, yeah, humans, I think there are so many amazing reasons to want human life and the beauty of human life to continue, and to see through the kind of evolution of consciousness and of art and philosophy and these things. And I think that's what we're working for in the Great Turning, and recognizing that to do that, we have to take care of our larger body and sustain and regenerate biodiversity and all of that. And also within all of that is this, for me anyways, hopeful knowledge that nature will continue.
That's probably a great place to land. Thank you so much for this conversation, Trina. I'm wondering how people could learn more about your work.
Yeah, so I can be found through my business, which is Alderley Counseling and Facilitation. And my website is alderleycounseling.ca. And you can also, if you go there, you can see what I'm doing in terms of the Work That Reconnects. I have groups online during these COVID times, and in person once we can gather outdoors or safely together indoors again, hopefully soon.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again. And we covered so much ground in this conversation and lots of places to drill down. So we'll have you back.
Wonderful. Thank you. I look forward to it. And thanks for doing this, Silas. It's really great.
Thank you so much to Trina for this inspiring conversation. If you want to find more about her work and maybe sign up for one of her online courses on the Work That Reconnects, head over to alderlea.ca. That's ALDERLEA.ca. And I'll post some show notes at awakenrelationship.com. While you're there, sign up for the new e-course, Connecting During COVID, 3 practices for filling your love bucket during a global pandemic. If you haven't already done so, please hit subscribe, and I'd also super appreciate a review wherever you listen to podcasts. So, dear listener, thank you so much for tuning in. Till next time, stay connected.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Awake in Relationship. If you liked what you heard, please click subscribe to get the latest show delivered fresh to your device, or sign up for our newsletter at awakeinrelationship.com. Sharing is caring.